Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another broadcast on Russia sanctions. And this time we decided to give you an overview of the export control measures that have been implemented since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In this presentation, I will go through three main developments. First of all, we will cover US export control updates and see at the new measures that Commerce BIS has implemented. Then we will look at the United Kingdom export control measures and the European Union export control measures. And at the end, we can receive some questions. So for those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Alexander Witt, and I'm a sanctions and export control consultant working for the Association of Certified Sanctions Specialists. Before I show you an overview of the latest export control measures that have been implemented by the US Commerce Department, Bureau of Industry and Security, I wanted to look at an overview of measures that have been enforced before February 2022, because some really important measures have been enforced after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014. And this is an overview of the most important measures that BIS has implemented in 2014. So the actions taken by BIS in the past couple of weeks are actually building on existing restrictions in place on Russia since its occupation of Crimea in 2014 and for other purposes. Certain of these restrictions remain in effect, others have been expanded in scope as a result of the recent actions. First, in April 2014, BIS denied pending applications for licenses to export or re-export any high technology item subject to the EAR to Russia or occupied Crimea that contributes to Russia's military capabilities. In addition, BIS took actions to revoke any existing export licenses, and 13 companies have been designated on the Entity List. For those of you who don't know what the Entity List is, a designation on the Entity List of BIS imposes a license requirement for the export, re-export, or other foreign transfer of items subject to the EAR to the designated companies that are on the list with a presumption of denial. Then in July 2014, BIS added 11 more entities to the Entity List, all from the Donetsk and Luhansk region. And BIS instituted a policy of denying export, re-export of foreign transfers of certain items for use in Russia's energy sector that may be used for the exploration or production from deep water, Arctic offshore, or shale projects that have the potential to produce oil. And in December 2020, BIS amended the EAR by adding a new military end-user list, MEU list, as well as the first tranche of 103 entities, which included 58 Chinese and 45 Russian companies, restricting specified items for exports, re-exports, or transfers to Russia when such items are destined for a prohibited military end user. These developments are actually important because the latest measures that have been implemented by BIS build on these measures that we have seen in 2014. Now we will have a look at the most recent actions taken by Commerce BIS in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. First, on February 24th, BIS issued a final rule that implemented a series of new export control measures under the EAR against Russia. These new US export control measures primarily target Russia's defense, aerospace, and maritime sectors and are intended to curtail Russia's ability to access technologies and other items that could be used to support its military capacities and its defense industry. exports, re-exports, and transfers of all items subject to the AAR and classified in the CCL categories 3 to 9 now require a license to Russia, subject to limited license exceptions and a licensing policy of denial. The Commerce Control List categories 3 to 9 include many items that are not particularly sensitive from an export controls perspective and did not previously require a license to Russia, such as telecommunications items and low-level encryption items. On March 2nd, in response to Belarus' substantial enabling of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, BIS added new license requirements and review policies for Belarus to the EAR to render Belarus subject to the same sanctions that were imposed on Russia in February 24. Then on March 3rd, in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, BIS added a new prohibition under the EAR that targets the oil refinery sector in Russia with new stringent export controls and identified 91 entities that support Russian military activities. This rule built on existing restrictions BIS put in place on the Russian deepwater oil and gas exploration and extraction industries in 2014 by imposing a policy of denial on such items and applying similarly stringent restrictions on a wide variety of items necessary for refining oil. On March 11, BIS published a rule restricting the export of US origin luxury goods to Russia and Belarus, including certain spirits, tobacco products, clothing items, jewelry, vehicles, and antique goods. A luxury good refers to any item that is identified under the EAR. This rule imposes a license requirement for the export, re-export, and transfer of luxury goods to or within Russia or Belarus. And the latest update came in on March 18th, when BIS publicly identified commercial and private aircraft that have flown into Russia in apparent violation of the EAR. As we have seen in February 2022, BIS imposed expansive and stringent controls on aviation-related items destined for Russia, including a new license requirement for specified aircraft or aircraft parts. As a result of the measures enforced in February, any aircraft manufactured in the United States or that is manufactured in a foreign country and includes more than 25% US origin controlled content is subject to a license requirement if such aircraft is destined for Russia. BIS has identified a number of commercial and private flights from third countries to Russia, all of which are owned or controlled by or under charter or lease to Russia or Russian nationals, and has listed those aircrafts. Accordingly, any subsequent actions taken with regard to any of the listed aircraft, including but not limited to refueling, maintenance, repair, or the provision of spare parts or services, are subject to prohibitions by BIS. To sum it all up, what we have seen in existing export controls on Russia and the new export control restrictions on Russia can be summarized here. Basically, there's a policy of denial for export licenses of high technology items subject to the AAR to Russia or occupied Crimea that contribute to Russia's military capabilities. There's also a presumption of denial for any exports to entities listed on the BIS entity list. There's a policy of denial for export licenses for certain items for use in Russia's energy sector. There's a prohibition of exports to entities on the military end-user list. There's a prohibition of exports. There's a policy of denial for sensitive items for Russia's defense, aerospace, and maritime industries. And there are stringent export controls on Russia's oil refinery sector that have been built on the 2014 measures. And last but not least, export restrictions on luxury goods to Russia and Belarus. Now let's have a quick look at the measures that have been enforced by the United Kingdom. Just like the US, the UK also reacted to Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014. So the UK has introduced restrictions on the export of a wide number of goods to or for use in Russia. These export restrictions are in addition to the existing prohibitions on the export of goods to or for use in Crimea and the existing restrictions on the export of energy-related goods and services to or for use in Russia. On February 25th, the UK announced that it will suspend all existing export licenses for dual-use items to Russia, along with the approval of any new export licenses for the same purpose. Following this announcement, the UK Export Control Joint Unit has removed Russia as a permitted destination from multiple open general export licenses, including cryptographic development software and technology, chemicals, and equipment relating to the oil and gas industry of Russia. It is now prohibited to export from the UK to or for use in Russia the following categories of goods and technology: critical industry goods and technology, dual-use goods and technology, and military goods and technology. And just like the US, on March 15th, the UK announced a ban on exports of high-end luxury goods to Russia in line with similar actions taken by the G7. The ban is set to likely affect luxury vehicles, high-end fashion, and works of art. Now let's have a look at the measures the European Union took. And again, similar to the US and the UK, I highlighted that export restrictions on dual-use items existed also since 2014. The EU, under the pre-existing sanctions regime, prohibited the export of dual-use items to or for use in Russia, where they could be intended for military use or for a military end user, along with the export of dual-use items to a list of 9 Russian defense sector entities. The updated dual-use sanctions set out in the latest regulation go further. The EU now prohibits the export of dual-use goods and technology to any natural or legal person, entity, or body in Russia or for use in Russia. Certain types of technical and financial assistance are also prohibited. The prohibitions are also subject to limited exemptions that can be granted by the competent authorities of the EU member states, such as contracts that have been concluded before the 26th of February. However, no exemptions will be granted where the dealings relate to contracts struck before the 26th of February if the competent authorities have reasonable grounds to believe that the dual-use items might have a military end use or are intended for aviation or the space industry, or might be one of the persons on a greatly expanded list of Russian defense sector entities. The list of Russian defense sector entities has been increased from the previous 9 to 64 entities listed in Regulation 2022-328, which lists Russian defense and technology companies and shipyards. In addition, in this regulation, the EU also prohibits exports which might contribute to Russia's military and technological enhancement. Secondly, it prohibits goods and technology for use in oil refining. And thirdly, it prohibits goods and technology for use in aviation. If you'd like to know more about the specifics of these restrictions, please have a look at the Regulation 2022-328. Also, please check the frequently asked questions that the EU published last week on these 3 new export restrictions. Basically, to sum up old and new UK and export control restrictions on Russia, there are prohibitions on exports of dual-use controlled goods. Exports of dual-use goods from the EU or the UK to any person or entity in Russia or for use in Russia are now prohibited. There are export bans. The EU and the UK have banned unlicensed exports to Russia and Belarus of high-tech products that could be used in the military or defense sectors and goods to be used in oil refining and certain aviation goods. Additionally, in connection to Belarus, the EU has restricted the trade of products used for the production of manufacturing of tobacco products, mineral fuels, bituminous substances and gaseous hydrocarbon products, potassium chloride, potash products, wood products, cement products, iron and steel products, and rubber products. And lastly, there are also import bans. The EU and the UK have banned imports of all goods originating from the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Thanks everyone for your attention. This was my presentation today on the latest export control restrictions by the US, the UK, and the EU. If you have any questions, please post them now and we will take them. If you have any questions that are a bit more extensive, feel free to contact me directly via my email or on LinkedIn, where you can find me as well. Thanks everybody for watching, and let me know if you need any help.